In today's video, we have all the latest NHL trade rumors, including the latest on guys like Patrik Laine, Jack Roslovic, as well as Jonathan Marchessault of the Golden Knights. We also have the latest free agent updates on guys like Mike Hoffman and others, and we also have some more signings to discuss as well. We'll jump into all the latest news coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, I certainly hope you all had a very Merry Christmas. I want to wish Happy Holidays here to everybody watching the channel. Again, I don't know if I've mentioned it before here recently in the last couple of days, but thank you again for all the support throughout 2020. I hope you're having a great holiday season, and let's jump into today's news. Now, as I mentioned, we have some news and rumors to talk about. Let's get started with some signings first up. Now, longtime NHL veteran and longtime KHL veteran as well, Ilya Kovalchuk has headed back to the KHL. Now, we'd reported here back, I think about a week and a half ago, that there was some speculation that Kovalchuk could very well go back to the KHL if he was not able to find an NHL contract here in relatively short order, and he's done just that, signing a 2-year deal with Avant-Garde. So it looks like his career in the NHL is over. I mean, he's already left once before. He's clearly not the same player he used to be. He did have a bit of a resurgence with Montreal last year during the brief time he was there, which many thought, myself included, that he would probably go back there and re-sign. I'm not sure why that never happened exactly. Clearly the Habs had other plans. I would suspect that he likely would have been open to that, and he seemed like he was, but it just never came to be. Montreal went a different direction, and nobody else really opened the door to a Kovalchuk signing, so his time in the NHL, pretty well safe to say it's over. Another 2 years' time, I don't see there being a new opportunity come up at that point. So his time is over. Back to Russia he goes. Now on to some other signings here. The Edmonton Oilers have signed defenseman Slater, formerly of Tampa and Chicago. He gets a 1-year deal at $850,000. So that's a pretty value bargain signing for Edmonton. Obviously, we knew they were in talks to possibly add a defenseman. We didn't know exactly what their plan was going to be. They do need to get Ethan Bear signed as well as an RFA defenseman who's played a much bigger role last year and is certainly going to continue to be a big force. So hopefully they don't have any issues with contracts in that regard. And they have some young, interesting defensemen as well. But Koekkoek should slide in there, and especially with Clefbaum being out for the entire season. And obviously, newly signed Tyson Barrie, they'll get a lot more playing time as well. So that's a pretty decent bargain signing for somebody who can give them third pair minutes. So we'll see what their plans are for their younger defensemen, but gives them a little extra depth and a little extra insurance in that regard. So I personally like that signing for Edmonton as well. I know there was some rumors about them being interested in Ben Hutton, who's another UFA defenseman out there looking for work, and Koekkoek's name was in the mix there as well. So obviously that worked out for Koekkoek. And when it comes to Ben Hutton, he's also been linked to the Boston Bruins as well. There's likely some other teams checking in too, but those are the main ones he's been talking to here so far. Now, when it comes to the Boston Bruins, of course, a lot of question marks still about Zdeno Chara. Based on all the comments, everything we're hearing, I'm still, at this point, I might almost be more surprised if he does sign than if he doesn't. Not really sure if he's leaning towards retirement or going to another team. I know there's lots of teams with interest, so it's just a matter of where he finds that right fit, but still a big question mark there for Boston. Now, the Chicago Blackhawks have also dipped into free agency, and they certainly got one of the better center icemen and more veteran guys still out there on the market looking for work as well. They've signed veteran center iceman Carl Soderberg to a 1-year contract at $1 million, old veteran bargain contract here, so that gives them some extra added depth at the center position here as well. That could be spawned as well by the injury to Kirby Dach. Of course, we saw Kirby Dach join Team Canada at the World Junior Championships and get injured in their one and only exhibition game before the tournament got started. It looks as though he could be out for a fair bit of time, and if they're not going to have Dach be able to play center ice for them for a while, getting a veteran to have some extra added insurance in that position probably was a wise move for the Blackhawks. So Soderberg can go there in a 1-year deal, and obviously when Dach is able to come back, I'm sure he'll be given every opportunity like he was before. But it was a big blow for Team Canada, big blow for the Blackhawks. Obviously he'll miss training camp in the start of the season. Not sure exactly how long he's going to be out, but he's going to be out for definitely not anything too short term by the sounds of things here. And we also had another signing as well, but this one's only a professional tryout. This Columbus Blue Jackets have signed defenseman Michael Del Zotto, who's now 30 years old. He's bounced around with a fair bit of teams throughout the league. He's going to Columbus on a PTO. Of course, into Columbus, they're not going to have a ton of ice time with guys like Werenski and Jones eating up a lot of the minutes there. But at the same time, they do need some extra added depth. They've traded out a few defensemen throughout the offseason. There's still some rumors out there on David Savard maybe being on the trade block as well, because the Jackets do want to bring in another top scoring forward or somebody who can play a top six role, and they've yet to make any moves in that regard. They are still appearing to be, looking at some free agents as well as the trade market. So he could come in handy there if they do end up moving out a guy like Savard. I mean, Del Zotto's probably not more than the third pair of defensemen at best with most teams, but he's been around long enough that he can give you a little bit of extra veteran insurance if they do decide to make any additional trades. Now, when it comes to free agent winger Mike Hoffman, who's arguably the top guy out there, I think, it's unusual to me, very weird that he's still looking for work. And to me, it's not a matter of options. I think Hoffman likely is holding out to get as much money as possible, and it's not that he hasn't had offers. He just hasn't had offers that he really likes. Now, the latest reports indicate that teams like the Boston Bruins and the St. Louis Blues are very much in the mix and could be the leading contenders to sign a free agent winger, but they both have their fair share of cap issues. I mean, the Blues do have some wiggle room with long-term injury reserve that they could do. Obviously, they have Alexander Steen going on a long-term injury reserve for the whole year. We know this. He's basically retired. They also have Vladimir Tarasenko, who's going to miss the start of the season, and very well could miss at least half to three-quarters of the year, depending on how that shoulder progresses. So they do have the possibility here that they could have a big buffer of LTIR funds to use. They could bring in a guy like Hoffman. They might be forced to make a trade later into the season, though, to become cap compliant or to adjust their roster versus taxi squad can be done through waivers as well. But the Blues do have the means. The Bruins are a little tighter on cap space right now, and they do either sign Chara or another defenseman likely, so they don't have a ton of space without either putting a player through waivers or trading out some salary. So I think St. Louis would have an edge, but there is some belief as well that the teams like the Carolina Hurricanes and the Columbus Blue Jackets, again, are still very much in the mix there as well, and are having ongoing negotiations and talks with Hoffman's camp, and are expected to be one of the teams that could sign him. Now, there could be some surprise teams as well. There are still some teams with cap issues that appear to have interest. I just don't see how it's likely to make it happen, given the fact that they just would have to make a trade. Now, if we see another team kind of clearing some space and they were able to make a deal, then that very well could be a signal that they're bringing in a free agent, and Hoffman could be that guy. But those are the main teams right now linked to be the front runners, having regular conversations with his agent. Now, when it comes to the trade room world, there's really a couple of things we want to look at here today. One's the Winnipeg Jets. There's still a lot of talk and uncertainty over the future of guys like Jack Roslovic and Patrik Laine in Winnipeg. Now, they're both out there for the right price, but of course the price tag, especially on Laine, is going to be a substantial package. So I do think the odds of seeing a trade for the Finnish sniper are probably pretty slim at this point. Now, as we get into the season, depending on how things go, and even towards next offseason, I do think the likelihood of a trade certainly gets more and more likely as we head on here, given the fact that his contract's closer to ending. We'll see how the season goes, meaning what he gets for playing time, how he produces, does he seem happy. All those things will factor into his future. Roslovic as well is another great young player with Winnipeg, looking for more of an opportunity, has yet to get it. I really thought he would be that number 2 center, but the fact that they traded for Paul Stastny and brought him in still signifies to us that they're not confident in Roslovic can be that guy. And if he's not ready for that role as of yet, I think he's pretty close myself to asking for a trade. In the last year, we've seen rumblings from his camp indicating there are some frustrations over his level of play, how much ice time he gets, the role he gets, etc. Still being used primarily in a bottom 6 role on a lot of occasions. So those are two players that likely could be dealt. We know Winnipeg needs help on the blue line. Right now, they're not linked to any specific teams. Line has been linked to many teams throughout the last 3 to 6 months. And those usual suspects, I guess you could, to a degree, say, are still in the mix, but still have interest. But at this point, we don't have any reason to believe a deal is imminent. But the Jets are a team that could very well be one of those ones we see make a deal before camps get started to strengthen their blue line. It's desperately needed, and one of those two unhappy players could be the way to get it done. I would think a Roslovic deal would be much more likely myself. Like I said, a Laine deal could happen eventually, but the price tag's so high that today's market in the NHL, I just don't see it coming to fruition for some time. Now, when it comes to the Golden Knights, they're a team that's going to have to make a deal of some sort to become cap compliant. And the latest that we're hearing in that regard is that they're still having a lot of conversations around guys like Pacioretty, Marchessault, Alec Martinez, and Marc-Andre Fleury. But to me, when it comes to Pacioretty and Fleury, I think those trades are less likely given their contract hits and the fact that they do have some trade protection in there as well. When it comes to A guy like Marchessault, I think it's more likely he does have a little bit of trade protection. He can block a trade to 8 different teams, but he's also only making that $5 million range, which is a much more tradable contract with teams that would be able to take that on. So the latest talk would be, perhaps a team like the Ottawa Senators would be the ideal trading partner for the Golden Knights to be able to take Marchessault. Obviously, they do have some younger players, but to me, there are a lot of their prospects that they really want to get more development and ice time for this year would be center icemen. And they could add a scoring winger like Marchessault to the mix. It would kind of take the pressure off some other players like a Connor Brown, for example, for having to be that top guy all the time, where Marchessault could get power play time, top line minutes as well, and even play with some of their other guys like a Brady Tkachuk. And he could certainly make that team a little bit deeper and stronger this year and beyond, where he's got a longer term contract. Some feel the Senators could be in contention as much as a year or two from now, and he could factor into that given a term on his deal. Of course, they traded for Matt Murray in the offseason, so they do have a much more solidified starting goaltender. Of course, if he doesn't improve his play, though, based on what we saw his last while in Pittsburgh, then it might not be a huge move, but at the same time, it could very well pay off if he can get back to that form. So the Senators do make a lot of sense amongst trade partners for potential Vegas deals, and Marchessault would be the most likely scenario there. I think they're going to have a hard time trading Alec Martinez if they go down that road. The teams with cap space, for example, I just don't think have that need. And guys like Fleury, I think Fleury's contract is going to be the toughest to trade. Likely doesn't happen. They've already verbally committed to him as well. Pacioretty, I do think is possible if a team comes calling with the right deal. But to me, the more likely, logical scenario would be a Jonathan Marchessault trade. I think there's a bigger market for a scoring winger like that. And the teams that would have the space, that's probably what they would be more interested in. Anyways, by no means is there a given that the Sens and the Golden Knights are actually having conversations, but there are some articles out there suggesting they would be a good fit. I do agree with that. The Senators could very well decide to go to camp with what they have, but if they really want to take a step forward this year, they could take advantage of a team's cap space like Vegas, who they do have a trade history with, and get themselves a pretty solid scoring winger to help take this rebuild up a notch to make them more competitive in a really tough all-Canadian division this year, where they're going to find themselves in tough quite a bit, depending on how much of improvements in the development they get out of their younger players this season. So let me know your thoughts on a potential Vegas trade. Could the Senators be a good trade partner? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content. And give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.